Heath Ledger. Before The Dark Knight even came out, Heath Ledger was already gone. On January 22, 2008, his housekeeper found him unresponsive in his Manhattan apartment, face down on his bed. Paramedics were called but could not revive him. He was pronounced dead at the scene. He was 28 years old. The cause of death was acute intoxication caused by the combined effects of 6 different prescription medications: oxycodone, hydrocodone, diazepam, temazepam, alprazolam, and doxylamine. No single drug was present in a lethal quantity. It was the combination that killed him. None of the medications were obtained illegally. All of them had been prescribed to him by doctors in different countries as he struggled with insomnia and the physical and psychological toll of his work. People close to him described a man who had found it increasingly difficult to switch off, particularly after his preparation for the role of the Joker, a performance he threw himself into so completely that he isolated himself in a hotel room for weeks, keeping a journal of the character's darkest thoughts. He won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for that role posthumously, becoming only the second actor in history to win an Oscar after death. His daughter Matilda was 2 years old when he died. She has spoken about him in interviews as an adult and described growing up with his absence as something that never really gets easier. Paul Walker. He was one of the most beloved actors in Hollywood, not just because of the Fast and Furious franchise that made him a global superstar, but because everyone who worked with him described him the same way: genuinely kind, unpretentious, someone who remembered every person's name on set. On November 30th, 2013, Walker was a passenger in a Porsche Carrera GT driven by his friend and business partner Roger Rodas when the car lost control and struck several trees and a concrete lamppost in Valencia, California. Both men died instantly. Walker was 40 years old. The cause of death was listed as traumatic and thermal injuries. The car caught fire after the impact, making the wreckage almost unrecognizable. The investigation concluded that the primary cause was the speed of the vehicle, which was traveling between 80 and 93 miles per hour in a 45 miles per hour zone. At the time of his death, Walker was in the middle of filming Fast and Furious 7. The studio made the decision to complete the film using a combination of previously filmed footage, digital face replacement, and his 2 brothers as body doubles. The ending of that film, in which his character Brian O'Connor drives off into the distance and the screen fades to white, is one of the most emotionally affecting conclusions in blockbuster cinema history. He left behind a daughter, Meadow, who has continued his philanthropic work in his memory. River Phoenix. Long before anyone was talking about the 27 Club, River Phoenix was dying on a sidewalk outside a nightclub in Hollywood at the age of 23. On October 31st, 1993, Halloween night, Phoenix collapsed outside the Viper Room on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles. The club was co-owned by Johnny Depp. Phoenix had been inside when he began convulsing and was carried out to the pavement where he suffered multiple seizures. His brother Joaquin, yes, that Joaquin Phoenix, called 911 in a panic. The call was later leaked and broadcast on radio stations across America, which by any measure was one of the most grotesque media moments of that decade. River Phoenix was pronounced dead at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center at 1:51 in the morning. He was 23 years old. The cause of death was acute multiple drug intoxication, specifically a fatal combination of cocaine and heroin, commonly known as a speedball. His blood also showed traces of marijuana, diazepam, and ephedrine. What made his death hit so differently was who he was: a committed vegan, an environmental activist, someone who publicly spoke about living consciously. The gap between the image and the reality of what happened that night stunned a generation. He had already been nominated for an Academy Award at the age of 18 for Running on Empty. The films he never got to make are impossible not to think about. James Dean. He made exactly 3 major films: East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, Giant. That is the entire cinematic legacy of James Dean, and it was enough to make him one of the most iconic figures in the history of Hollywood. On September 30th, 1955, Dean was driving his Porsche 55, O Spider, on California State Route 46 near Cholame when a student driver named Donald Turnipseed made a left turn directly into his path. The collision was nearly head-on. Dean died from his injuries: a broken neck, multiple fractures, and internal injuries, either at the scene or shortly after arriving at Paso Robles War Memorial Hospital. He was 24 years old. What makes the James Dean story so eerie is how many warning signs preceded it. His mechanic had nicknamed the car Little Bastard and reportedly told him it would kill him. Actor Alec Guinness, who had met Dean briefly the evening before the crash, later claimed he told Dean the car looked sinister and that if he drove it, he would be dead within a week. Dean laughed it off. He was dead 6 days later. He was the first actor to receive a posthumous Academy Award nomination, and then received a second one for Giant, making him the only person ever to receive 2 posthumous Oscar nominations. His face has appeared on more than 300 million posters. Rebel Without a Cause came out after he was already dead. Marilyn Monroe. She was the most famous woman in the world, and she died alone in her bedroom. On August 4th, 1962, Monroe was found unresponsive at her home in Brentwood, Los Angeles. She was 36 years old. The official cause of death was acute barbiturate poisoning, a probable suicide caused by an overdose of chloral hydrate and Nembutal, both prescription sleeping medications found in high concentrations in her system. The circumstances surrounding her death have fueled decades of speculation, conspiracy theories, and genuine unanswered questions. The exact timeline of when she died and when her death was reported has never been satisfactorily explained. Her connections to both John and Robert Kennedy have kept the conspiracy machinery running for 60 years. What gets lost in all of that is the actual person, a woman who had been in and out of psychiatric facilities, who struggled with addiction, who had endured a childhood of instability and abuse, and who was being discarded by the entertainment industry that had built her up and chewed through her. Her final film, Something's Got to Give, had been shut down by the studio, and she had been fired just weeks before her death. She had given everything she had to an industry that treated her as disposable. Whether her death was suicide, accidental overdose, or something more sinister, the life that preceded it was one of the most painful in Hollywood history. Brandon Lee. This one is the kind of story that does not feel real, even after you know all the details. Brandon Lee was the son of martial arts legend Bruce Lee and was on the verge of his own major breakthrough in Hollywood. He was 28 years old and filming The Crow in Wilmington, North Carolina, when on March 31st, 1993, during a scene in which his character is shot, a gun that was supposed to be loaded with blank cartridges fired a real bullet fragment into his abdomen. He was taken to the New Hanover Regional Medical Center, where surgeons worked for 6 hours to save him. He died on the operating table. The cause of death was a gunshot wound to the abdomen. The investigation found that a bullet tip had become lodged inside one of the gun barrels during an earlier scene and had not been checked or cleared. When the blank cartridge was fired, the lodged tip was propelled forward with enough force to be lethal. It was a catastrophic failure of on-set gun safety protocols. The film was completed using a combination of existing footage, a stand-in, and digital effects, and was released in 1994. It became a cult classic. Brandon Lee had been engaged to be married. His fiancée was on set the day he died. His death, along with the later tragedy on the set of Rust involving Alec Baldwin, has kept the conversation about firearms safety on film sets painfully relevant. Robin Williams. The world thought it knew Robin Williams because he made everyone laugh. The full picture was more complicated and more heartbreaking. On August 11, 2014, Williams was found unresponsive at his home in Paradise Cay, California. He was 63 years old. The official cause of death was asphyxia due to hanging. His wife, Susan Schneider, had gone to bed the previous night believing he was in another room. An autopsy later revealed that Williams had been suffering from Lewy body dementia, a progressive and degenerative brain disease that causes hallucinations, cognitive decline, and extreme anxiety. His doctors described the progression of the disease in his brain as one of the most severe cases they had ever seen. The cruelty of Lewy body dementia is that it mimics and is frequently misdiagnosed as other conditions, including Parkinson's disease, which Williams had also been recently told he had. He had been experiencing symptoms for months: confusion, fear, and inability to perform, but neither he nor his doctors fully understood what they were dealing with. His wife later said that his final year was defined by a terror she had never seen in him before, a man who had spent his entire life bringing joy to others, losing his grip on his own mind. His death prompted a significant increase in awareness of Lewy body dementia. Williams had spent his final weeks trying to return to work, hoping that being on a set would help him feel like himself again. It did not. That was 7 Hollywood legends and the real stories behind how they died. If this video moved you at all, subscribe to Cause of Death. New videos every week going deep on the deaths that changed history, from music to sport to the big screen. Drop a comment telling us who you want next, and we will get to work.